You ever witness something so ridiculous, so unnecessarily dramatic, that you can't decide whether to burst out laughing or flip a table? That was exactly my emotional state the morning I tightened the final bolt on a towering 6-foot wooden fence. A perfectly straight line of lumber slicing the lakefront in half like someone took a ruler to the world. Behind me, neighbors stared in stunned silence, jaws dropping one by one as the fence cut straight through the beach, the grass, and even the dock. On the other side stood Margaret, cousin of our infamous HOA president, Karen. She froze mid-sip, coffee mug dangling from her fingers as she realized her deluxe loungers, tiki torches, and half-built jet ski ramp were now stranded behind a wall she never saw coming. But this wasn't sudden. This showdown was brewing for years. 5 years ago, when I bought my house in Willowbrook Estates, the biggest selling point wasn't the kitchen, the porch, or the neighborhood charm. It was the deeded lake access. That sandy beach and community dock were a huge part of my kids' childhood. Weekends meant fishing, swims at sunrise, and late-night marshmallows by the water. Then came Karen Fitzgerald. 6 months after snagging the HOA presidency, she transformed from neighborly volunteer to self-appointed dictator. Fines appeared for everything: grass length, mailbox color, wind chimes. She demanded written approval to plant anything not on her approved species list. Nepotism? Full speed. Her brother-in-law became the paid landscape inspector. Her best friend got the pool contract. And when her cousin Margaret came for a long stay, the dictatorship went deluxe. Margaret didn't just use the lakefront, she conquered it. Heavy loungers. Towering torches. A massive speaker blasting remixes from sunrise to midnight. And then the piece de resistance. A private jet ski ramp right in the center of the shared beach. I approached politely. Hey, this is a shared space. We all use it. Margaret didn't blink. Karen said I get this half exclusively. You're barely here during the week anyway. Then she waved a paper in my face, a so-called HOA easement reassignment stamped with Karen's signature. It supposedly gave Margaret exclusive lakefront control for improved community resource management. Funny thing, 2 board members were out of state during the unanimous vote listed on that paper. My instincts screamed foul. City planning records confirmed it immediately. The lakefront was deeded to specific lots, including mine. No HOA could override that. At the next HOA meeting, I presented everything. Karen's reaction was Oscar-worthy. Red face, white knuckles, voice cracking as she claimed the board had magically amended bylaws to give her total waterfront authority. She brandished another mysterious amendment no one had ever seen before. Meanwhile, Margaret's mini-resort grew bigger. Music louder. Guests rowdier. And one morning when my 8-year-old daughter went down for a swim, Margaret blocked her with her arm. This is private. Go around. My daughter came back in tears, and that was it. The lawyer in me woke up. I dug through surveys, deeds, HOA charters, historic records, and everything pointed to one undeniable truth. Karen and Margaret were in violation. And personally liable. I sent them a certified notice. 72 hours to remove everything or face legal action. They laughed it off. Karen and Margaret even showed up at my door with a wannabe lawyer whose entire legal education seemed to come from TV drama reruns. They tried threats, sob stories, bribery, shared schedules, and nonsense legal theories. When the deadline passed with Margaret building an even bigger pavilion, I started phase 2. A licensed surveyor marked the boundary line, and Margaret's setup spilled way over it. The next morning, I arrived with a fence crew and permits in hand. And that's how the Great Lakefront Divide began. Word spread through Willowbrook Estates faster than a wildfire in dry grass. By the time the fence posts went up, half the neighborhood had quietly drifted over, holding coffee mugs and whispering like they were watching a reality show live on location. Panel by panel, the fence grew, straight through the middle of the beach, down the property line, and clean across the community dock. It was the pettiest and most satisfying line ever drawn. Right as the final section blocked her path, Margaret burst from her patio. Her eyes bulged. Her mug slipped. Ceramic shattered. "This is illegal," she screeched. Karen arrived minutes later, in a bathrobe, curlers, slippers, and a fury that could peel paint. She called it vandalism, trespassing, abuse, emotional terrorism. She even tried identity theft, though none of us knew what identity she thought I had stolen. Her meltdown drew even more neighbors. Someone recorded. Someone else called it karma. One man brought popcorn. Karen called the police. Police reviewed my documents. Police left. Then code enforcement. Reviewed. Proved. Left. Karen escalated all the way up the chain of command. Honestly, I wouldn't have been surprised if she tried calling NASA. Meanwhile, Margaret's side of the fence looked like a sitcom. Half a jet ski ramp sticking out like a wooden amputated limb. Speakers facing the wrong way. Shade structure poles split awkwardly by the fence line. That evening, Karen called an emergency HOA meeting. It backfired catastrophically. The room was full. People who never attended showed up. Karen tried rallying the crowd but instead unleashed a tidal wave of grievances she didn't know existed. Retired Judge Tom Harrison stood up first. Calm voice. Iron logic. He listed every violation Karen had committed: misappropriation of authority, procedural misconduct, financial irregularities. Sarah Chin followed. Her flower garden had been destroyed earlier by one of Karen's bizarre projects. She came armed with receipts, photos, emails, and fury. One by one, homeowners rose, revealing the corruption they'd been quietly documenting. The final blow came when Margaret's husband arrived, late, disheveled, and visibly done with everything. He saw the fence, saw the mess, heard what Karen had orchestrated, and immediately declared they were leaving the community. Within hours, Margaret's entire lakefront empire was dismantled. Karen tried one last move, declaring an executive emergency order to tear down the fence. But the HOA's actual attorney stepped forward, cleared his throat and said, "Madam President, you have no such authority." Silence. Then, "I recommend the board vote to remove you before this escalates further." The vote was instant. Unanimous. Brutal. Karen Fitzgerald, dethroned. But karma wasn't done. Once Karen lost her presidential crown, the board wasted no time peeling back every shady decision she'd made. The deeper they dug, the uglier it got. Fake invoices. Unauthorized contracts. Funds routed to her family. And most damning, payments made for Margaret's exclusive easement paperwork. Within weeks, the HOA's official audit painted a picture even Karen couldn't talk her way out of. The board filed formal charges. 3 months later, Karen stood in court, trembling before a judge who had zero patience for HOA tyrants. The case was straightforward: fraud, misuse of funds, breach of fiduciary duty, and unauthorized alteration of community bylaws. The verdict? Guilty on all counts. She received 2 years of probation, 300 hours of community service, and was ordered to repay $47,000 to the HOA. As the gavel struck, Karen collapsed in her chair, the final echo of her reign of control. Margaret and her husband moved out shortly after, leaving behind only tire tracks and a community sigh of relief. And as for me? Some mornings I sit on my half of the lakefront, coffee in hand, sunrise painting the water gold, and admire the most satisfying line of wood ever constructed. A quiet lake. A peaceful community. A fence that ended a dictatorship. And if this wild neighborhood showdown gave you life, hit that like button, because trust me, the next HOA meltdown might be even crazier.